Go ahead. Sorry, I'm in the middle.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's event, which is hosted by the UK government in collaboration with the Global Plastics Action Partnership. My name is Julian Braithwaite, and I'm the UK's permanent representative to the World Trade Organization and other international organizations here in Geneva. Now, before we begin, just some housekeeping. First of all, we're looking for lots of questions from all of you in the audience, so I can put to the panel later on in the event. So what we're doing in order to allow that to happen is we're using the Q&A box of the platform, Zoom, for you to put questions to the panelists. The chat function has been disabled, but the Q&A box is where you can all add your questions, and as they strike you throughout the presentation, please write them into the chat box, and we will make sure, I'll make sure they get put to the panelists later on in the session. Secondly, can I encourage you also to have conversations on social media using the hashtags #PlasticAction and #TradeEnvironment. And please also note that the session is being recorded and we'll be putting it online afterwards. Now, today's event is the second of three during the WTO's Environment Week 2020, which concern themselves with one of our most pressing environmental issues, plastic waste. Yesterday, we saw the delegations of China and Fiji receive strong support by many WTO members, including the UK, for the launch of their informal dialogue. This aims to encourage discussion and exploratory work on how the WTO could contribute to domestic, regional, and global efforts to reduce plastics pollution and transition to a more circular and environmentally sustainable plastics trade. I'm also delighted to see that France and the Netherlands will tomorrow lead discussions on the role that international trade, its rules, and the World Trade Organization could play to mitigate the impact of that plastics have on the environment and support the development of a circular economy. In keeping with our event today, I also note that their event will also be looking at the role of civil society and the private sector. Now, of course, it's only through collective leadership that the international community can tackle our most pressing environmental concerns, which is why the United Kingdom has joined the Friends for Advancing Sustainable Trade group in the World Trade Organization this week. We look forward to working with all of the members of this group, and we encourage others to join it, so that collectively we can address issues such as the circular economy, the blue economy, sustainable agriculture, and of course plastics waste within the World Trade Organization and the multilateral trading system itself. Now, the UK was the first major economy to put its net zero commitment into law. To help achieve this, we're drafting further legislation to reduce waste and keep resources in the system for longer, leaving behind our traditional linear economic model and creating a more sustainable and efficient circular model from which the environment, the economy, and society will all benefit. The Global Plastics Action Partnership has a key role to play in all of this. It's a multi-stakeholder platform dedicated to translating commitments to reduce plastic pollution and waste into concrete action around the world. It aims to shape a more sustainable and inclusive world through the eradication of plastics pollution. The UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs was one of the Global Plastic Action Partnership's co-founders. And it's great to have three WTO members participating in the partnership, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Ghana, where successful national plastics action partnerships have been set up and of whose experience you will hear more later. We look forward to other interested WTO members engaging as the partnership looks to grow and expand its reach. The partnership is moving into the scaling up stage and is working to take the lessons learned and the early successes from these three pilot countries and share those with many more countries around the world, with an eye towards creating regional clusters in Asia Pacific and West Africa for collaborating and knowledge sharing on the circular economy transition. And we'll hear more from Kirsten, who's in the lead on that partnership later in this event. I now want to pause briefly, and we're going to poll all of you online. It's good to see so many of you joining us today. I understand a question is going to be put to all of you, and it's really, the question is, which of the following do you view as the biggest trade barrier to a global circular economy for plastics? And I'd be very grateful if you could all now fill that in quickly, and we'll do a quick straw poll of all of you in terms of what you think are the major barriers. Is it illegal trade and the mislabeling of plastic waste? Is it exporting countries that have little oversight of plastic waste treatment at their destination? Is it a lack of global definition of what sorted, clean and uncontaminated plastic waste means as part of the Basel Convention amendments? Or is it the differences in standards related to recycled plastic production, use and labeling, etc.? Or is it something else? So please, if you can use the form to fill in your answer to that now, and we'll get a straw poll from all of you as to what you think the biggest barrier is before we go into the panel, and our panelists will also be able to respond to that. So we've now closed the poll, so I hope you managed to get a chance to give us your answer. It is now coming up online, and I see that it is the fourth of all of these that is seen to be the biggest trade barrier to in this problem. The differences in standards related to recycled plastic production, use and labeling. It was very interesting. There were none over illegal trade. There was about an equal number who thought it was exporting countries not having proper oversight, and those who thought there was a lack of a clear global definition of plastic waste. But we will come on to the point that the majority of you have focused on, over half of you, which is the differences in standards. And I'm sure the panelists will be addressing that today. So now let me welcome our first distinguished presenter, Lord Goldsmith, who has prepared a pre-recorded message for us. Lord Goldsmith is the UK's Minister of State for the Pacific and the Environment, and he is the minister responsible for the ocean and blue belt policies of the United Kingdom, international environment policies, climate and biodiversity. And Lord Goldsmith was first elected as a member of Parliament from his home seat of Richmond Park and North Kensington back in 2010. So we'll now listen to Lord Goldsmith, and then I will introduce the panel.
As an island nation, the ocean matters a huge amount to the UK, so it is a real pleasure to be speaking to you today about the importance of tackling plastic pollution. The ocean is literally where life began, essential for all life on Earth, full of wonders we've barely begun to understand. And we all depend on ocean health for air to breathe, food, resources, the flow of global trade. But for some, its incalculable importance is much more direct and immediate. Over 1 billion people, for instance, depend on fish for their survival. So as the world's coral reefs, on which a quarter of the world's marine species rely, are killed off in our warmer, more acidic seas, the ecological tragedy is matched by the human tragedy. At home in the UK, we've banned the billions of single-use plastics most of us can do without. We introduced a charge for single-use plastic bags that's reduced their sales by a staggering 7 billion per year. We introduced a world-leading ban on microbeads in rinse-off personal care products. And we're right now legislating to design waste out of the system so that we make products that last, that can be repaired, that can be recycled. We're also shifting the onus from consumers to producers, making sure businesses are required to take full responsibility for the lifetime costs of their product. Around the world, we know that people want to see plastic pollution solved. And where we can support those initiatives, we are absolutely committed to doing so. The UK has invested 2.6 million of UK aid into the Global Plastic Action Partnership, funding matched by our Canadian friends. Ghana, Indonesia and Vietnam are all already participating, and I strongly encourage others to sign up as well. The challenge we face is immense, and it is urgent. Meeting it is only going to be possible through global collaboration. So we believe it is time to start negotiating a new global agreement to coordinate action on marine plastic litter and microplastic litter, one that goes far beyond the existing framework. With over two-thirds of UN member states already on board, we have a chance now to create an unstoppable momentum to tackle plastic pollution in the way that the Paris Agreement has done for climate change, or the Montreal Protocol has done for ozone depletion. And I hope many, many other nations join us as well. A few weeks ago, more than 75 world leaders and over 50 non-state actors from businesses to charities signed up to an ambitious Leaders' Pledge for nature. It was a commitment to put nature and biodiversity on a road to recovery by 2030. And I'm proud that the UK played a big role in strengthening that pledge, insisting on the strongest possible language, line by line. But the challenge now is to turn those admittedly and undoubtedly powerful words into action. Next year, the UK will be hosting both the G7 and the all-important UN climate change COP, as well as playing a key role in COP15. And we are committed to putting nature at the heart of our programme and doing all we possibly can to turn the tide. Thank you very much.
That's to hear from Lord Goldsmith, and particularly I think about the announcement that we're making today as the United Kingdom that we're going to be supporting a new global agreement to coordinate action against marine plastics and microplastics is something that we believe, and hopefully we can now put our full weight behind, we believe will make a real difference in terms of tackling this issue. Sort of a global agreement tackling plastics pollution of the sort in this area that the Paris Agreement has played on climate. So we will be discussing that more, I'm sure, in the course of today. And I'm sure we'll be getting questions from all of you. Do put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll come back to them later. Now, I will now introduce our next speaker, who's Kirsten Hughes, who is the director of the Global Plastics Action Partnership at the World Economic Forum here in Geneva. Kirsten has spent most of her career between London, Brussels, and Washington, D.C., partnering with businesses, government agencies, and civil society, and focusing on emerging markets and collaborating to derive meaningful social and environmental change, including critically in this area. Kirsten, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And thanks also to Lord Goldsmith for those very inspiring open remarks. I think it's exciting to hear what the UK is committing to. So thank you for that. It's a real honour and a pleasure to be here today. As mentioned, I'm Kirsten Hughes and I'm the director of the Global Plastic Action Partnership, a multi-stakeholder public-private platform that's addressing plastic waste and pollution. We've jumped ahead, it seems, to the second slide, so I'll probably move my comments up there. What we wanted to share with you here is just some staggering statistics that you can see, which is that first and foremost, some of these I'm sure many of you have already seen in the past. So the fact that 8 million tons of plastic waste leak into the ocean every year. Globally, less than 15% of all plastics produced are eventually recycled. And until recently, a large proportion of plastic waste intended for recycling was exported, a source of controversy due to inadequate infrastructure for proper disposal in importing countries. The COVID pandemic has exacerbated this challenge. You see that these numbers are real, they're large, and they're insurmountable. The crisis has taken hundreds and thousands of lives. It's uprooted incomes and shaken economies. And in our sector alone, trying to address plastic waste and pollution, we see the need for PPE, and that has skyrocketed the use of single-use plastic. We also recognize that often there's an inadequate infrastructure to manage this additional waste. Recycling facilities are often shuttered during lockdowns. In the informal sector, waste pickers are grappling with lost incomes and dangerous working conditions. So the plastic waste and pollution crisis is only growing with this pandemic that we're currently facing. Next slide, please. As the world's leading organization for public-private cooperation, the World Economic Forum is home to the Global Plastic Action Partnership. The Global Plastic Action Partnership was created 2 years ago under the leadership of the United Kingdom and Canada, as well as private sector partners, the Coca-Cola Company, PepsiCo, Nestle, and Dow. We are a multi-stakeholder platform dedicated to translating commitments to reduce plastic pollution and waste into concrete action across geographies. One of the key lessons we have learned in fighting this, amongst many, many other issues, is that one cannot really go about grappling with this global issue without appealing to many, many voices, such that the governments must step up, private sector must step up, and there must also be space for civil society to work together to see real progress. For us to eradicate plastic pollution, it cannot be done by one actor alone, but through the progressive and collaborative action of many. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Global Plastic Action Partnership came to life thanks to the collaboration of a number of public and private actors at a time when leadership was really needed. Canada at the time was chairing the G7 and initiated the Ocean Plastics Charter. In parallel, the UK created the Commonwealth Clean Ocean Alliance, of which Ghana, who will be speaking next, was one of the first Commonwealth nations to join. GPAP works closely with the UK in a number of aspects: agenda setting through representation of GPAP's Governing Council and Steering Board, knowledge sharing by actively participating in task forces and engagement and delivery sessions, primarily at the national level, and also through alliance building, through the engagement of country partners like Ghana, who is GPAP's first Commonwealth partner nation. We are looking to create future partnerships and networks across geographies in the common goal of accelerating marine plastic pollution action. And we thank Lord Goldsmith for his words inviting all of you to join us as we aim to address this very important issue together. As part of our strategic approach, GPAP was founded on 3 main pillars: convening communities and curating conversations, generating new insights and action roadmaps, and catalyzing strategic investments. We are building national platforms through our hands-on partnership. This approach is known as the National Plastic Action Partnership, and we will soon be launching the STEP, a systems toolkit that will sit online and help nations looking to address plastic waste and pollution. We're currently working in 3 nations, Ghana, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And we're looking to expand our national level presence, seeking new government partners to help scale up our in-country delivery. At the global level, we are curating a community of experts and enthusiasts to help us deliver impact. We help countries establish country-level baselines for measuring plastic waste flows in countries. There's not a lot of data driven and there's not a lot of analysis currently taking place, but together we can actually set the baseline to understand what the plastic waste flows are looking like and how we can then work to try to address them. This activity then leads to the production of national action roadmaps. And the action roadmaps tend to be an establishment of guiding principles, a number of different ideas or levers that can be pulled, like innovation and metrics, as well as gender mainstreaming across the plastics value chain. We are exploring the actions needed to break down the barriers to financing and de-risk investments in the circular economy for plastics. We're creating financing roadmaps for mobilizing and attracting funding for our partner nations. And we are forging powerful partnerships to unlock financial mechanisms to support governments. Next slide, thanks. The Global Plastic Action Partnership is focusing on 6 impact areas, one of which is informing policy, which includes the role of international trade at the multilateral level. We are working closely with the Trade and Investment Platform at the Forum and other leading voices who support and promote the benefits of international trade in addressing plastic waste and pollution. Many countries lack the capacity to manage growing amounts of plastic waste in circular and sustainable ways, yet we believe that trade can play a key role in doing so. what I found fascinating by the poll we just took was that a number of these points are some that we highlighted because earlier this year, we published a white paper on plastics, connecting the circular economy and international trade. Some of the challenges we found included countries' plastic waste intended for recycling tended to have very little oversight at treatment, including at destination and in importing countries who didn't have appropriate facilities to address this. Moreover, it's suspected that illegal trade and the mislabeling of plastic waste is also rife. So how do we address these? Well, there are a number of different ways and a number of opportunities. For instance, and I think some of you answered this in the poll, trade facilitation actions are needed to implement the Basel Convention plastic waste amendments. As you already know, from January 2021, plastic waste that is sorted, clean, uncontaminated, and effectively designed for recycling can be traded freely, while other types will require consent from export, import, and transit countries via a process known as the Prior Informed Consent Procedure, the PIC. If countries can align on what constitutes sorted, clean, and uncontaminated, that would be a first positive outcome. There are also so many different standards, whether on recycled plastic production, whether in use, labeling. I think all these different standards create many challenges since businesses have to try to adapt to sometimes so many different kinds of requirements that are often also diverging and possibly even conflicting. We've learned that there is very little data also on the availability of alternatives or on recycled plastic. Thus, we'd like to propose the need for greater transparency and traceability of plastics in the market. SAP, who will speak later today, also doing quite a bit in the space of traceability of plastics. How can we link that traceability along with the transparency such that also we see a transparency of domestic policies that really supports businesses of all sectors to engage in the space? The more that companies know about the requirements on plastic waste policies, waste management options, including export-import requirements, and the targets for alternatives and such, the more effectively we can all design supply chains for circular outcomes. We've highlighted the need to improve the investment landscape for waste management, recycling facilities. To date, it's just not been easy for organizations to engage and to invest in the circular economy. We are interested in finding ways to de-risk investments and to address subsidies that promote unsustainable plastics production and trade, including fossil fuel feedstocks for plastics at both the domestic and the multilateral levels. Doing so can help shrink the pricing gap between virgin and recycled polymers. There are many opportunities for us to address plastic waste and pollution through discussions within the WTO and multilateral trade negotiations, and we appreciate the conversations that are taking place this week. Thank you again, Mr. Ambassador, for inviting the Global Plastic Action Partnership to this discussion. I look forward to hearing from the next panelists, all of whom are partners of ours in tackling some of these challenges at both the global and national levels. We remain committed to supporting and addressing this issue and really appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for that really fascinating overview of the partnership. And it's a really good example of something that the world includes the communities themselves on the ground most impacted by these sort of the impact of these bringing together those different elements is critical to finding effective solutions. And the WEF does this brilliantly, and it's great that you're involved in doing this on something that's so important for the world and is close to the hearts of so many people around the world on plastics pollution. And we'll now hear about one of your partners, in fact, because we're now going to welcome our next speaker, Oliver Boachi, who is the Special Advisor to the Minister of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation in Ghana. And in his current position, Oliver serves as the Chief Delegate for the National Plastics Action Plan that you were mentioning earlier, Kirsten. And he works with the stakeholders within government and public research institutions, academia and the private sector, and with Ghana's development partners to establish the foundation for sustainable management of the environment, including on plastics, and to develop strategies for the development and application of science and technology and innovation for Ghana's socioeconomic development. Oliver, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Braithwaite, for your gracious introduction. I want to take the opportunity to thank the WTO and the Global Plastics Action Partnership for giving us this opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we are doing in Ghana. First, to support the global effort to deal with the plastics menace, and also to be a part of the evolution to a circular economy framework, which we believe is the most responsible way of managing our resources. Can I have the first slide, please? I'd like to start off by telling you a little bit about Ghana's commitment to tackling the plastic pollution. And there are three things that I'd like to mention in that regard. The first is the National Plastics Management Policy. This was a policy that came out of a directive that the president issued when he took office in 2017, and basically directed the Minister of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation to come up with a strategy to deal with the plastics pollution in Ghana. Now, as a result of that directive, the National Plastics Management Policy was released as a zero draft in 2018. And it was the boldness and the farsightedness of this policy that attracted global attention. And with that, the Global Plastics Action Partnership decided to select Ghana as one of, at that time, only 2 countries to be partners in this initiative. I'm very happy to tell you that since it was released in 2018, some modifications have been done, and in February of this year, Cabinet of Ghana approved the National Plastics Management Policy, and so the working document that we are using to enact policies and implementation plans to deal with plastic pollution. The second thing I'd like to mention is Act 863, which was passed in 2013 as an amendment to an existing law that had to do with the customs, excise, and preventive services. And the amendment was just to create an opportunity for customs to collect levies on all importation of plastics into Ghana. So it was more or less some form of extended producer responsibility, which will allow us to marshal resources to be able to manage plastics waste in Ghana. And then the third thing that I would like to mention is the establishment of a resource recovery secretariat, which is basically a unit that has been created under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation to deal with all aspects of plastics management in Ghana. And so it is the unit that will serve as the interface between government and all stakeholders, whether they are government institutions, the private sector, development partners, and so on, in their collaborations with Ghana to manage the plastics menace in the country. Can I see the next slide, please? Now, you can see from this diagram how the Resource Recovery Secretariat is serving this purpose. As I said, it's a unit under MESTI, and it provides an interface to all stakeholders, including government, ministries, development partners, GPAP, civil society organizations, financial institutions, and so on. So everything that has to do with the management of plastics in Ghana is going to be handled through this Resource Recovery Secretariat. So this shows the seriousness that the government of Ghana attaches to the management of plastics and the partnership that we are forming with global entities to deal with the menace of plastics around the world. Next one, please. So now I'd like to mention what we are doing with the Global Plastics Action Partnership. And this is the simple framework that we have developed to implement the partnership that we have formed with the World Economic Forum. I'd like to just mention a few things because this framework talks about so many things, but there are some key things that I would like to mention here. The first one is the policy, which, as you know, or as I've told you, is the National Plastics Management Policy. And it is meant to address a lot of the challenges that we have identified when it comes to controlling plastic waste and also creating a circular economy in Ghana. Now, next to it is the processes that we are using. And here, I would just like to mention what we are doing with the Global Plastic Action Partnership through the three-pillar strategy that Christine just talked about. The first one is the baseline analysis, which basically allows us or gives us an opportunity to see what is on the ground at the moment, where plastic leakages, plastic waste leakages occur, how they are flowing through the country and where they end up, and what kind of interventions that we can put in place to address those leakages. The second process is the development of a national action roadmap that Christine talked about. And with that, it is precisely what needs to be put on the ground to ensure that we are dealing effectively with these challenges or leakages that we see. The next thing that I would like to mention is the governance framework. Basically, we have brought together a great deal of stakeholders, including global entities who are in the private sector, governments like the UK government and the Canadian government, who have been instrumental in setting up the Global Plastics Action Partnership. They form the steering board of NPAP, and it's made up of about 21 stakeholders, and each stakeholder is also encouraged to appoint a technical committee member. And through this, we are managing NPAP in Ghana very, very effectively, and it's attracting a great deal of attention around the world. The next thing I would like to mention are the outcomes that we are seeking to achieve with this partnership. The first is a circular economy framework for plastics in Ghana. Now, this is the beginning of developing.
Hi, Oliver, sorry to interrupt. It's Julian here. Just to say that if you could wrap up in the next minute or so that we can move on to the other panelists. And we've got a very tight program today, and we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak and we get to.
Sure.
So,
Thank you very much, Ambassador. The framework talks about these outcomes, so I'll just leave it and go to the next slide. And basically, that talks about how through NPAP, we are helping to effect global trade. Basically, if you are going to have a circular economy functioning in Ghana, first, we need to expand our market and include partnerships with regional neighbors like Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, and so on. Because without that, we won't have the adequate feedstock to be able to do circular economy systems in Ghana. And then the next one is a partnership with NORAD, that's the Norwegian government, through which we are seeking to prevent marine litter and microplastics. And part of that is the strengthening of the legal and regulatory framework in Ghana for us to be able to control the trans-border movement of plastic waste. And so through this partnership, we are also helping to facilitate global trade. And so thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Oliver. I think what your presentation shows is just the sort of practical lessons that we can learn from these pilots. And I want to pay tribute to Ghana for really being at the forefront of doing this, and I think leading the way and allowing us to learn lessons for the future that we'll be able to apply around the world as we fight plastics. So I really wanted just to pay tribute to Ghana's leadership on this. Thank you, Oliver. We now give the floor to our next speaker, Dorcas Ansah, who is Ghana Country Representative for Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing. Dorcas has over 15 years of development experience and has worked extensively in facilitating processes, organizing development interventions, gender mainstreaming, as well as training and capacity building from the informal sector to civil society and parliament. Dorcas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. I hope you can hear me clearly. Great, great. Can I have the first slide, please? Please go to the next. Okay, so for WIEGO, this presentation will share our perspectives on being part of the National Plastic Action Partnership. I'd like to first pay tribute to GPAP and NPAP for this great opportunity. First to say that this platform, the multi-stakeholder platform that Mr. Bachi talked about, has provided such great opportunity, particularly for waste pickers who previously were neglected from all discussions, both national, local, and whatever discussions that you will think about. The waste pickers particularly and the informal economy was very, very absent in these discussions. And this platform has given them a voice. WIEGO serves on the steering committee of NPAP, and we also have a representative at the technical level, and we have been very active on the baseline, on the gender mainstreaming strategies. We have worked with SAP, and all that we have represented the informal economy. And so to pay tribute and celebrate the fact that this platform has been very, very good. And even for the waste pickers themselves, they were part of the discussions around the national plastic policy that Mr. Oliver mentioned, and are also part of the UNDP waste recovery platform and campaign. They have been involved at their level, and it's really helping them to build their capacity to also hear for people and this platform to hear their voice. One of the things we also want to highlight is the fact that we would like this platform to demonstrate and also deepen harmonizing policies across allied ministries and agencies, particularly MESTI, Sanitation Ministry, who are the frontliners in the waste sector in working on policies and strategies on reducing the waste menace in Accra. we think that when we deepen that harmonization, it will improve more transparency, it will improve uniform approach, so we don't find ourselves on one breath saying we're encouraging inclusivity, on another breath you see another agency encouraging something else. And so we think that harmonizing policies and approaches with allied agencies and ministries will go a long way to ensure that the policies and principles that we ascribe at the national level are cut across through all the ministries that work on it. Next slide, please. So the discussions, as I said earlier, has really focused on plastic flows, plastic systems, which is fine, which has gone very well. But I think that one thing we want to mention that NPAP has done very well is also the aspect of the human face dimension that we brought to in developing the systems and the documentations that have been going on. Particular mention is the gender mainstreaming and social inclusion, and the approaches that we have used, the consultative approach that we've used to bring on board all voices who are relevant and necessary around the table. Critical to the waste speakers, of course, are happy that we are working on developing systems, we are working on developing action plans, but for them, what is critical, what is important, is how all these systems and all these action plans translate into improvement of their well-being. And so to encourage and also to deepen that effort, that whatever systems are developed go in a very long way to improve the well-being of the workers. Of course, investment, finance, technology systems are going to be developed. Now we've gone through long processes of developing the baselines and the strategies. We will be moving into investments and technological phase, but we think that whatever system, investment approaches, whatever financial systems, whatever technologies that we adapt need to be poor, need to be poor women to achieve tangible benefits for the workers that work on it. And we think that it is absolutely important. And that is why we are celebrating the fact that the human face dimension approaches that we NPAP took for us has been very helpful, and will encourage that we sustain that effort in making sure that these benefits translate into proper working conditions for the waste speakers. Next slide, please. So during the COVID, we have worked myriad with organizations, with platforms that could stretch their hands and support the waste speakers. Particular mention has been the UNDP recovery platform, where we were very active in developing the campaign. UNDP actually presented some PPEs for the waste speakers, which has gone a long way in protecting them from COVID. Again, for SAP, we were very, very involved in working with them. We think that the automatic plastic value chain will actually improve transparency, and that should actually be encouraged. We have been providing such a key role in giving on-the-ground intelligence to SAP in their development process, so they know that whatever technology that they come up with can be adapted and then can be used by the locals on the ground. And we have also played the role of providing information to the waste speakers and the informal economy on how to adapt to these changes, and also to build their capacity in readiness for when these systems are ready. And then I think that as much as WIEGO is doing all that, NPAP needs to provide that space for strengthening those skills in whatever systems that we have, and provide resources for those skills to be built. Next slide. Yeah, as a civil society organization, we know that yes, the baselines, we are moving into big actions. we know that big players will come in. But we think that the innovative financing systems that we develop should have inclusive extended producer responsibility schemes that actually acknowledges the environmental services that the waste workers provide. We need to be able to acknowledge and quantify and remunerate them for whatever services that they provide. As we have it now, the workers are on their own, they do what they do, they provide the services, but there is no recognition of their services through the systems that we have. And so we encourage that will be encouraged. And then again, the investment systems that are built should have the supply chain capacities for the workers. They need to have aid for trade. When the big players come in, we still have to create the space for the ground workers to have the opportunity to have material. Yes, I'm just ending.
Sorry to
I'm just ending.
Thank you very much.
That's my last point. Yes, for the waste pickers to have facilities and provisions that will encourage improvement in their working conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. And I think particularly for bringing a focus onto something that's perhaps neglected or poorly understood, particularly in perhaps countries like the United Kingdom, which is just the importance that waste pickers play in all of this, in this circular economy, and how vital that role is, but how poorly understood it is, and how partly that's because it's such an informal part of the economy. But I think the points that you make are very well taken. And again, an important lesson that comes out of the pilot of Ghana's national plan. This brings us to our next panelist, Maggie Boogie, who is the Chief Business Officer at SAP Services. And Maggie's team's purpose is to create valuable outcomes and experiences for SAP customers, helping them build their future business through the lens of their economic, environmental, and societal impact and contribution. Maggie was recently named as one of the world's top 50 most powerful women in the data economy by Data Economy magazine, reflecting her commitment and contribution to innovation within the technology industry. Maggie, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on wherever you are in the world, to everybody. So we officially joined GPAP in January 2020 in Davos, when our CEO, Christian, who you see there on the slide, made our commitment to play our part in delivering a significantly cleaner ocean by 2030. Christian and the team at GPAP have been tremendous partners in strengthening our global response to the plastics pollution, and most importantly, to drive progress towards a fairer and more sustainable and, yes, more economically viable world. So at SAP, we believe that progress requires collaboration. You know, GPAP, in our experience, has provided an amazing platform to engage with NGOs, governments. We've heard from Dorcas and Oliver just what is possible when the power of government is brought together with the power of private enterprise and also NGOs, but also with customers and other partners. And what I would love to do now is give you all insight into, well, how are we actually doing it together to bring it to life and make it happen? And to put it simply, you know, for SAP, for those of you who don't know us, we're a software company, and we believe that when we bring our tools, our insights, our solutions, our products, our industry expertise to the table, to eliminate waste and maximize resource productivity, that will help us collectively to stop plastic pollution and also to achieve a transition to a global circular economy. And we believe, and I think that the experiences of this year, so eloquently articulated by Christian, have shown us all that it's even more important than we all believed it to be at the beginning of the year in Davos. So when we work together at global as well as national level in collaboration and co-innovation, well, we can actually achieve our goals. So next slide, please. Well, in our experience, when you connect private investment to national financing, to provide solutions, technology, data, insight-enabled solutions to tackling plastic pollution, new economic and trade, as well as social inclusive opportunities emerge. And as you'll see now from some of the bit more context and the detail of our example of digital traceability that has been mentioned by both Oliver and Dorcas in Ghana. So, as we heard, in Ghana, less than 20% of plastic is recycled today. And as Dorcas talked us through, systems of pickers and collectors exist, but they're very informal. And we lack good data on volumes, materials, where is the plastic coming from, where is the plastic going? And any systems that are in existence are likely to be paper-based, manual, and therefore somewhat unreliable and difficult to scale any insights from. So together with everybody else, we looked at this situation, spoke to customers, some of our major customers who work and deal with this challenge in Ghana, such as Coca-Cola and Dow Chemical, and also worked in close partnership with Oliver and with NGOs and GPAP. And the great thing was we realized we can really help in a meaningful way. So what are we doing though? We're building a system that digitally connects the waste pickers, the collectors, the aggregators, so that together we can track the volume and the types of plastic collected, that we can get insight to where it goes and also to the prices paid and the existing and the emergent marketplaces across the value chain. And this connects the informal sector, the waste pickers, as Dorcas talked us through, some of the most marginalized and poor people in the economy, to the digital ecosystem, which means more reliable, regular income. I love the way Dorcas articulated this. This is fundamentally a human story and a story of human progress, as well as, yes, trade and economic opportunity. And that leads to higher productivity and in future offers us the collective opportunity to provide more benefits and training to those people. And our collective work in Ghana is based on actually an existing SAP product that has already been implemented right across Africa and Southeast Asia, which is our rural sourcing management, which is about helping rural farmers grow and sell crops more profitably. And what we did was apply the lessons learned from there to the issue of plastic waste. And as you might imagine, the challenges faced by rural smallholding farmers and plastic pickers are remarkably similar. Lack of data, lack of insight. Nobody knows who they are, where they're operating, what they're producing. They're in the informal sector, selling their goods to the next person up the chain. But the end-to-end or circular value chain was invisible. So connecting farmers to a digital supply chain allows access to better prices for crops and that buyers can trace the materials back to the individual smallholder. You can also push down other benefits like access to finance and access to training, which makes farmers more productive, allowing them to grow more, earn more, and essentially creating win-wins. Now, applying that to the world of plastic, we hope to see similar benefits to digitally connecting the pickers to the global value chain and marketplace. So we're going to track what they collect and the prices they get paid, and the pickers can receive information on average prices across the region and see and understand and trust that what they're getting paid is fair and they're not getting exploited by nefarious middlemen and women. They get a better wage and more waste gets collected. So middlemen and aggregators have solid, reliable data in real time about where stocks of plastic are being collected, and this allows us to produce trends and, most importantly, to deduce actionable insight. So we can target investment, for instance, baling machinery into the right places to increase productivity and shorten time to value. Trucks, for instance, can run full rather than half empty. We can eliminate paperwork and we can eliminate leakage, and we can identify first and then address corruption. And this gives us reliable insight for the industry at a more macro level to decide where to invest in new recycling plants, and for buyers like Dow and Coke to meet their sustainability targets. So this depends on shared insight, and the basis of that is comprehensive and accurate data, because that's the starting point for public and private sector actors to make these business cases for investments to address our collective challenge of plastic waste management. Because without those economies of scale, how can we actually recycle, and also in a way that makes economic sense for producers and creates trade opportunities? To drive data at scale, we're really dependent on this data, and our digital solutions that help with that collection and targeting of waste from where it's generated can increase the volume and the quality of plastics, and in turn augment their reuse. So we have also joined to the task forces for the World Economic Forum in Indonesia, where we're looking to expand the solution, and also engage in other initiatives in South Africa and Nigeria. And it's our longer term goal to build regional hubs for plastic recycling, with these countries as hubs. South Africa potentially could be a hub for the SADC countries, and Nigeria and Ghana could act potentially as regional hubs for ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, for those of you not in the know. So in summary, for centuries, trade has created new opportunities as well as common understanding. And the year that we're living in now, couldn't we all do with more common understanding? So essentially, together, we're creating a circular network business model, one that is based on monetizable insights, economic and social value creation through the fusion of technology, need, and opportunity. Ambassador, back to you.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And well, first of all, I thought your first slide gave me the shivers, because whenever I see a slide with lots of people sitting closely together these days, I keep on thinking, why aren't they socially distancing?
I feel
and it seems like it seems like it was a sort of a lifetime ago, but it was only in January. Just goes to show what a year we've had. But thank you, Maggie, for bringing, I think, those insights about a system-wide and a systemic approach to this problem, and also the important, the critical importance of data, really, and bringing all of this together and joining up all of the discrete elements of this circular economy in ways that they are, at the moment, they're not, but where there's so much opportunity for greater efficiency and productivity if we can do that. This now brings us to actually the sort of Q&A section of the event. And we're going to turn first to Elizabeth Took, who's the Director for Economic Cooperation and Trade, the Economic Cooperation and Trade Division in the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, who has prepared a question for the panelists. And Elizabeth's division's works to support closer economic relations amongst UNEC's 56 member states in the pursuit of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda, of which, of course, this issue of plastics plays right into that. So, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us, and you now have the floor. Elizabeth.
Many thanks, Your Excellency. Let me also thank the organizers and the panelists for such an information-rich and really inspiring panel. Inspiring because of the importance of the topic, and also because of the many concrete linkages to the work we are doing in UNECE. And here we are really looking at the circular economy. Lord Goldsmith just gave an impressive record of what the UK is committing to. And this includes designing waste out of the system, a key aspect of circular economy. And for us at UNECE, that's an important topic. Our member states have just decided that this is the theme of our next Commission session. Now, I have two questions. The first is about the power of digitalization for addressing the plastic pollution challenge, notably for monitoring transboundary movement of plastic waste. Christine from WEF, from GPAP, already referred to the Basel Convention and its plastic amendments, and they will become effective early January, and they will expand the convention scope to cover plastic. And afterwards, we heard from Maggie from SAP, showing us the power of digitalization and flagging the importance of traceability and digital supply chains. Now, let me put the two together. Let me flag to you the potential of electronic, digital information exchange for cross-border movement of plastic waste. At UNECE, we do exactly this. We assist the Basel Convention through our e-Basel standard. And I'd like to hear from the panelists where they see this potential going in the future. Second question, We had an impressive record at today's session about what developing countries are doing and how GPAP is supporting Ghana. Now in UNECE, we have a large number of transition economies being our membership in Central Asia, Southern Caucasus, Eastern Europe, Western Balkan. These countries are typically absent from the trade and environment debate. What can we do to bring them in? Thank you in advance for your answers.
Thank you. I think, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I will, I think, go straight back to the panel to see who would like to have a first go at those questions. And perhaps we can just quickly go through in the order in which you spoke. So, Kristen, maybe if you wanted to respond to that first, and then we can see if others want to join in.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mr. Ambassador, and what an interesting question indeed. I think, one of the most important things for us is to consider the links with the Trade Facilitation Agreement to address actually probably even both of those questions. How can we ensure that countries are dealing with the PIC procedure for plastic waste exports? So not all countries have the ability to understand their own high quality recycling facilities or even have access to that. I mean, Oliver mentioned that before, and so maybe there's a need for some of that cross-border engagement and facilitation that can really help to speed up what is normally a very lengthy and written process. Maggie also mentioned the importance of market, of utilizing recycled or ocean-bound plastic in consumer products that we're seeing, and there could be that digitization of the PIC that might help some of these emerging markets. Similarly, there's this public-private effort that's been working to help the National Food Sanitation Office in Morocco. And I just wonder if there's something that we can't learn a little bit around what they've been doing in this space that then, through the digitization process might help a number of those countries to engage in the transboundary movement of plastic, but also to link it again with the Trade Facilitation Agreement.
Thanks, Kristen. Did anyone else from the panel want to come in response to Elizabeth's question?
I'll jump in, Ambassador. I would just agree, obviously, with everything that Kristen has said. And I would also remind us all, in the context of what we're discussing here, that as we know that to make trade work, trade depends on economies of scale. And of course, a lot of the processes are going to differ country by country, but the beauty even of digital technology is that it is highly flexible. So for that if we collectively can get to consistent principles, well, the technology is our servant. Well, currently for the moment, we're not being governed by the robots yet. So I would say that not only is it possible, but I think we have like a moral and an economic imperative to actually create that consistency in the base processes that then we can leverage the technology to address both the opportunity and the challenge.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Christine and Maggie have said in answer to the question. And this goes to the first one that talks about how we are using digital facilities to control the trans-border movement of plastic waste. Basically, what we are doing right now is just a pilot. And what we have done is to select very small subset of the actors within the value chain, including those who are picking, those who are buying from them, those who are processing them, and those who are eventually off-taking the finished product. And it is just to test the concept of automating the activities within the value chain. Right now, the customs and other actors who have to manage the trans-border movement of plastic waste based on the Basel Convention and others have not been included in this pilot. But as Maggie said, the platform that we are trying to create is a very, very flexible one. So as we go through this pilot, learn our lessons, and see where challenges occur, we are going to scale up and bring on board many more of the actors, and definitely customs and the regulators like EPA, who are actually enforcing the regulations, will all be brought on board. But initially, we are just doing a pilot, and they are not included in what we are doing right now. But with time, definitely, we are going to bring them on board so that we use digital technology to control the transporter movement of plastic waste in and out of Ghana.
Thank you, Oliver. Dorcas, did you want to come in, have a chance to come in and answer the question as well?
Sadly, not to add more, I totally agree with Mr. Boachi, and where our focus is, our role has been to support that process and making it work, and so not really adding much to it.
Thank you very much, Dorcas, and thank you, Elizabeth, for your question to kick us off. Now, we have a number of questions from the Q&A box, and I'll read out 3 of them now, and I think they're fairly clear who they're aimed at. So the first one is from Francesca Rees-Williams, and she asks, how should the private sector and civil society raise the profile of the plastic pollution challenge with their national trade ministries to encourage them to address both at the WTO and in bilateral trade deals? And I mean, maybe Maggie, I can ask you perhaps to come in on that one. There's a second question from Andres del Castillo, and he says, congratulations for this event. It's great to hear from the UK formal announcement from Lord Goldsmith on the call for a global treaty to combat plastic pollution. What role can the Global Plastic Action Partnership play in the discussions and potential negotiations of such an agreement? And maybe, Kristin, maybe you could answer that one. And then there's one that I think is clearly for me from Caroline Deer-Burbeck, which says, great to hear that the UK will support a global treaty on plastics pollution and the new structured discussions on the environment. Will the UK also support the informal dialogue on plastics pollution and environmentally sustainable plastics trade launched yesterday here at the WTO? That's the Fiji-China initiative that I mentioned earlier. And I will answer that last one. So we have about another 7-8 minutes. So perhaps we could go first to Maggie, and then Kristin, and then I'll come in to answer the last question. Maggie, over to you.
Thanks, Grant. Francesco, fantastic question with a very simple answer. None of this works without a system-based approach. So I would say it's not even how can we encourage them, it's more how do we address the collective imperative to do so. And again, as I kind of chatted about when we were sharing our experience in Ghana, you're moving the conversation forward and also informing what the construct of that system-based approach and partnership looks like is very much dependent on insight. And being respectful of our time limit here, I would say that we at SAP have got an awful lot of actionable insight on our website, and can certainly afterwards share with the various attendees that may help you in the context of your industry move that conversation forward. But in summary, it totally depends on a systems approach and partnership, collective action that is that everyone's working from the same insight-rich data source.
And thanks very much, Maggie. And Kristin, over to you, I think, for the question about how the partnership itself can engage.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Ambassador, and thanks for the question. Similarly, I want to congratulate the UK for taking such a bold statement and taking such a bold position. I do think there's a role for the Global Plastic Action Partnership in that, building off of what Maggie was just saying about pulling together the players, the civil society, the private sector, the public sector, and the multilaterals, the United Nations, the World Bank, etc., to have broader conversations. So we work very closely with a number of the authors of one of these, the promoters, the WWF, and we also work very closely with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as close allies to the Global Plastic Action Partnership. And I think that through our impartial platform, we can actually have neutral kinds of conversations that allow many, many voices to come to the table, to have their say, and to be able to, I wouldn't say negotiate in a formal setting, but just to be able to have those cross-table, cross-discussions that hopefully can help inform others as they're trying to decide how to approach this. as Lord Goldsmith said, you know, it's fascinating to see that we have a Paris Accord on climate. We've seen what's the benefits have been from the Montreal Agreement, and so one can only imagine, you know, the benefits that we could see coming out of something like this. So we'd very much open our platform for the conversations across the board with many, many different players from throughout the sector and the value chain.
Thanks very much, Kristen. And I think on Caroline's question, which is about whether the UK is going to join this initiative launched by China and Fiji, this informal dialogue on plastics in the WTO. I think, I mean, I can say just this week we've joined one of the other groupings in the WTO on this, the Friends for Advancing Sustainable Trade, and we're looking at whether or not to join this one as well. And I think, you know, these are precisely the sorts of things that we, the UK, really want to put more weight behind, these different international initiatives, particularly in the trade and environment area, in ways that will support a really big push and build momentum towards the COP26 summit at the end of next year in Glasgow. And we see all of these initiatives all playing a supportive role in really building an international focus on sustainable sustainable economy, on sustainable trade internationally, and on how we can put in place international cooperative mechanisms that help obviously focusing on the follow-up to the Paris Agreement and the COP26, but really bring the environment more centrally into the international debate and into international negotiations in the course of the next year. So it's the sort of initiative that we're going to be looking at very actively to see whether or not we're going to join. It's precisely the sort of thing in principle that we want to be more involved in. But I say there's a number of initiatives, and we've joined one this week, and who knows what we'll be joining next week. And I'm delighted that we've announced that we're also going to be putting our full weight behind the UN Treaty on Plastics as well today. I think that brings us almost to the end of our session. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted really just to say what a stimulating discussion this has been and how fantastic it's been to have Maggie, Oliver, Dorcas, and Kristin joining us today and bringing all of their perspectives from both sort of the WEF's multi-stakeholder partnership model approach to this problem of plastics pollution, to the perspective of those working in the informal economy who play such an essential role, but are they're invisible really in many ways, and they're marginalized, and their role is not properly factored into what is an essential part of a circular economy. And Oliver, I think what Ghana has done and what the Ghanaian government has done to really act as a pilot for all of this, to show how all of these factors, whether it's the communities, whether it's the economy, the formal economy, the informal economy, the private sector, the role that government can play, and working internationally, how all of those things come together on the ground in a country that's looking to address this problem as part of what will be a much more international global circular economy. So fantastic and important lessons out of Ghana that I think will be really useful to share and to build on from this initiative. So I really just wanted to thank all of you for joining us, and to thank our wonderful audience also for joining us and for participating today. And I think we're going to leave you with a final question, and it builds on something, perhaps my final message really, which is that all of you online who have participated today, we really hope that you'll want to get more involved in the Global Plastics Action Partnership. And I think we have a question that relates very much to that. So we would be delighted if you could, it's not a complicated answer, but we'd be delighted if you could fill in that questionnaire now, because I think we're going to want to follow up, and there are various ways in which I think we'll be doing that. But knowing that you'll be interested in that, I think will be very important. So let us know through this poll right now. I think it's closing momentarily. But thank you very much, everyone on the line, for participating, and for the enthusiasm that I know so many people bring to this issue. I mean, it's an issue that people really understand, whether they're children or whether they're adults, whether they're in the United Kingdom or whether they're in Ghana. I mean, it's an issue that brings people together around the world. And what we need to do now is to bring governments and the private sector and international organizations and communities and civil society together in a way that allows us to join this up in the way that Ghana's been piloting. So thanks again, everybody. I think we may be in a position to hear the results of the poll in any moment now.
And then we'll just close.
So, news flash, which is we're leaving the poll open because everyone online can then put in their email address so that we can follow up with you. So please do add your email addresses into your answer to the poll, and we'll make sure that we're following up with you through the partnership after this event. So I don't think we're going to close it right now. So I think the poll remains open. But I will close the session now, and again, with thanking all of the panelists for joining us, for the fantastic presentations that they have provided us. Thank you to the World Economic Forum for partnering with us today. And thank you to all of you online around the world, whichever time zone you're in, for joining us in what is perhaps one of the most important discussions that we're facing in the issue of the international environment, and therefore one of the most important issues that we're facing collectively around the world. Thank you all very much. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.